Thank you everyone for coming out and taking a look at what we have in the ImagineIt Pulse platform, and specifically some of the new features that we've been doing in the previous few months around the ImagineIt Pulse platform. Because I don't know where people are coming from in terms of their knowledge of Pulse, we're going to briefly cover just a review of what Pulse is and how it works and why we think it's a good solution within the system integration space. And then we'll get into the specific enhancements that we've done to the Pulse platform and some of the endpoints. And then we'll go through an actual demonstration. So we'll get through the PowerPoint slides and onto watching it work. And then we'll go into a Q&A format at the end and answer any questions that you have about the process. So, moving forward, ImagineIt Pulse is a product that we've had for probably 4 years now, and it's the basis of a lot of years, probably 20 years worth of experience doing system integration between different CAD platforms, different document management platforms, and product lifecycle management platforms and ERP systems. We spent a lot of time building these on a custom and one-off basis. We started to transition to offering services around doing some other integration platforms for how to connect system A to system B, and we wound up thinking that we actually could do it better ourselves with a particular approach. So our concept in ImagineIt Pulse is that at least in comparison to a custom integration between two systems, we felt like we could make 85% of the integration reusable from customer to customer, between two different systems, and the 15% of the work is really sort of lightweight consulting that is going to be different for each customer. What is the exact mapping of fields? What is the logic that needs to happen? What are the workflows that need to happen to be able to integrate different systems together? And so Pulse was our attempt to really productize everything that could be standardized between an integration between different systems and sort of loosely couple them together. And so the way that this works from an implementation perspective is that the first question we ask is, what are the workflows that we're trying to automate? And as we look at a particular example, one example of what we integrate between is Autodesk Vault on one side and Fusion 360 Manage on the other side. And we have these connectors, but we really have particular workflows of data that you'd like to go from one direction to the other. So, sending a Vault file from where it lives in the engineering document management system of Vault, sending it up to the PLM system, Fusion 360 Manage in the cloud. Sending Fusion 360 item data back to Vault files that are attached to it, triggering engineering lifecycle changes, updating the Fusion 360 Manage working item as things change inside of Vault. These are all workflows that just need to be described, and then we can make them happen with Pulse. Now, these are workflows that could be triggered in different ways. They can always be triggered by hand if that's useful or necessary. But we also do a lot of work to trigger them automatically based on particular ways that each endpoint works. So on the Pulse side of things, we've got a lot of triggers that are available on lifecycle actions. So when a file or an item moves from a particular workflow state to another workflow state, that should trigger the data to move into Pulse, and then from Pulse onwards to wherever it needs to go to. So these are things that can be configured on our Vault connector. On the Fusion Manage connector, we generally are working with a lot of different change order workflows and that kind of thing. And any of these workflow steps can have associated to it a trigger which will send the data down to Vault in this particular example. So yeah, we do a lot of work in setting up the triggers and when these things should happen. And then finally, what are the details of that workflow? And we like to break things down into individual pieces, individual what we call scripts, because really what we provide in the middle is very scripting oriented. We did go down a path for a while when we were doing integrations with other tools like Jitterbit and others that are very nice and very graphical. But what we found was that it was hard to ramp people up and have people maintain and understand things. Whereas if you can keep the scripting to very basic kinds of things and just high-level logic and what the mapping of fields are, then there's lots of people that can understand this. And so each one of these is a script that the data passes through to ultimately do the work. And we have connectors that are out there that really try to do all the heavy lifting. All of our, we've got sort of professional software developers that do all of the connectors, and then we have people that are really application experts that do the scripting of how to tie different systems together by mapping fields or by setting up workflows and logic and that kind of thing. So lots of different connectors that we offer, and they all run within the Pulse platform in a software as a service kind of environment. You can also provide your own connector, or we can build a custom connector for you. But yeah, just to be clear, what is this sort of middleware that is Imagine at Pulse? The Pulse platform tracks the requests going back and forth. The data gets pushed from one side to the other. In some cases, it's files being pushed from one side to another. It really hosts all of the workflows and scripting of the data exchange. As I mentioned, transitions the data and the file storage across. For cloud-based systems, because we sort of support both on-premise systems like Vault, like SolidWorks PDM Pro, I guess that's most of our on-premise kinds of things. But then on the cloud side, most of the cloud technologies use what are called OAuth credentials to be able to work remotely with these other systems, and the Pulse platform manages those credentials for the scripting so that things are being taken care of in batch without anyone needing to be signed into the system. And we provide all the core capabilities of reporting and alerts and logging and tracking and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what's in the middle. And then, as I mentioned, Pulse scripting, we use C# scripting because, as we mentioned, we went around looking to see, can we find people with Jitterbit experience or Del Boomi experience, and it was really hard to find people that both had experience with those as well as domain expertise within engineering, document management, and that kind of thing. So we decided that in order to make our platform more maintainable by more people, that the answer was to stick with just sort of .NET programming and try to make it easy in that, let's see, go forward, the connectors are really doing all of the heavy lifting. And we want to make it, so that it's as easy as possible for the scripts to do the kinds of work that they need to do for integration. But we want to really keep them as simple as possible and just sort of limit them to field mapping and business logic and that kind of thing, which are going to be specific to each company and easier to maintain. So yeah, so that's the concept of the connectors and the roles that the connectors play. But yeah, that's the concept of Pulse, is a software as a service system that helps with doing system integration between different cloud-based or on-premise tools. And I would say that the other thing that is probably important to note is, as I mentioned, there are many tools that do system integration. Everything from Jitterbit to Dell Boomi to Microsoft Power Automate or those kinds of things. And in some cases, they might have thousands of endpoint connectors. And so, we've still felt like there was a role for us because we were going to really just focus and specialize in our particular area of domain expertise, which is engineering, product management, product lifecycle management, and the sort of easy tie-ins to the natural tie-ins to things like ERP. So that's our focus area. You won't see us doing probably CRM integrations like Salesforce. We won't be integrating with Twitter or those kinds of things. We're just going to stick to the specific engineering kind of needs that people have and be experts within that. So yeah, that's the idea. So now let's talk about what's new in Pulse. What have we added in the past few months in these new releases of Pulse? And that falls into both the Autodesk platform enhancements as well as Pulse endpoint enhancements. We've enhanced all of our different endpoints over that time, but I wanted to call out specifically some of the areas that we've done the most new things in, which are around Autodesk Vault and Autodesk Fusion 360 Manage. So talking about the platform side of things first. First I want to mention on the security side of things. We already felt like we were fairly locked down. We've sort of designed Pulse to be data encrypted at rest at all times, and really the data is rarely stored in Pulse on anything other than a transient kind of basis. Data's flowing through it, but we don't store a lot of meaningful data. So by design, there's not a lot of security concerns. But as we've been starting to be deployed into larger companies, we've gone through more and more, sort of comprehensive audits, as well as preparing for some of our own certification processes going forward. And we are finding little things that we can do to tighten things up within the software as a service sort of security model. So yeah, there's been a variety of security enhancements to further tighten up the underlying security of your data, and that's an ongoing process for us. From another sort of security-oriented standpoint, single sign-on. So we have now integrated in tenant-based enterprise single sign-on. So if you have Microsoft Azure Active Directory or Okta or Shibboleth or one of those kinds of directory systems, being able to sign into the Pulse software as a service system can be driven by that. So it sends over to there and then bounces back and confirms that you are who you say you are. It makes it both easier and more secure, because when somebody leaves the company, their account is going to be turned off automatically. And as I mentioned, we've tested and certified this with Microsoft Azure AD, with Okta, and it's based on technology that we've done in some of our other enterprise products. So we believe it'll work in probably the 3 or 4 other Active Directory service kind of things that we've implemented in the past. So that's something that we're excited about. And then from a scripting perspective, we'd like to make sure that we're continuing to be very flexible in how the actual scripting logic, business logic happens. And we did have some customers that were interested in, being able to, to have more options for how workflows could fork or could be more parallelized or that kind of thing. And so we did make that sort of thing possible by being able to have requests that launched other requests within the Pulse system. So yeah, there's enhancements there on the Pulse platform side of things. From the Pulse endpoint enhancement side, I guess I want to talk about Autodesk Vault first. First thing we did support Autodesk Vault 2023, which means that we're now currently supporting Vault 2019 through Vault 2023 in this version of the Vault connector, and it's still possible to use the older Vault connector if you've got an older version of Vault. We're still sort of backwards compatible, but our current Vault connector is certified up through Vault 2023. And we've done a variety of things to be able to support on-premise actions. So we look at this as Pulse, which is a cloud-based software as a service product, is able to send down certain actions to the Vault to perform on-premise within the Vault. And there's already a bunch of these that are not listed here, but the new actions that we have are for part number reservations, a check-in of files that have been retrieved from the cloud, sort of more flexible usage of the Vault job processor to be able to do work with jobs that exist in the job processor, being able to just requests that that data gets sent, so triggering a send process from the cloud, from the Pulse platform. We've added some more support for behavior of file-based links in folders. There's a little bit to convey if any error should happen during the process of running an on-premise action. There's more data that can get conveyed back to the cloud so that our system for logging and tracking those kinds of things can capture what's going on the on-premise side of things. Let's see, on the Pulse Vault client, we've got some enhancements around being able to send in the background. This just makes the sending process go faster for the user in the cases of both workflow-based triggering as well as interactive triggering of a send process. If the job processor can take care of the sending of the files rather than tying up the user's workstation while all of those files are captured and uploaded and that kind of thing. So particularly for large assemblies. And then better support for Vault item attachments. We're already supporting Vault item sort of file links, but attachments are sort of a separate thing, and we've added support for those. On the Autodesk Fusion 360 Manage side of things, we've added more support for different kinds of item search within the scripting environment. We've traditionally done search based on sort of simple parameters, but there's sort of a bigger and broader item search mechanism within the Fusion API that we now support. We've been working with adding and updating of item grid parameters, and we'll see a little bit of that today. Retrieving item relationships, so being able to jump between either a workflow item like a change order and what items it affects, or from an item to whether there are change orders that are attached to that item. Let's see, being able to interact with the workflow item history, so we can see things like how long has a particular ECO been in the current state that it's in within the workflow, and being able to update image or thumbnail sort of fields are sort of a specialized thing. So that's just something that makes the Fusion 360 data just a little bit more interesting and compelling to have thumbnails and that sort of thing. So that's the enhancements to the endpoints. But let's switch over. I'd like to hand it over to Corey, who's going to walk us through a couple different workflows within the Pulse platform and show us what does it really look like to run. Now, while Corey's flipping over, I will say that remember that this is a batch product, and therefore it's not the sexiest product in the world. And things grind away in the background, but yeah. So in terms of being able to move data back and forth, we think that if you have the right mindset, then that can be sexy too.
Thank you, Matt. So as you're seeing my screen right now, this is a workspace of an items and bombs workspace. It's a simple workspace that comes out of the box. As you can see here, the current workspace is blank. There are no items loaded into this workspace yet. And I'm going to hop over to Vault. And Vault has been connected through an integration with this tenant in this workspace of Fusion 360 Manage. And so if a customer has a design built up with a BOM and they want to get this information inside of Fusion 360 Manage, they can just right click on a file or item, and we can give them options to send these files to Fusion 360 Manage. And with that simple click of a button, you get some confirmations that the files have been sent through the job processor. And now Pulse, that Matt was so great in describing, is now functioning. And you can see if we open up Pulse and do a refresh, we'll see these items start to populate in here. And then as these items load in and we hit refresh, we can see that now we have a new processing inside of Pulse, and we're sending the Vault files to Fusion 360 Manage. And if we go inside of Vault and we open up our job queue, ignore some of these prior errors, but we have pending information that we're synchronizing the Vault file states in Fusion. And so one of the main benefits of this is we already have all of the components, all of the assemblies built up inside of Vault. If we need to get this information inside of Fusion 360 Manage without an integration, then each item or record would need to be created inside of Fusion one by one item at a time, or you'd have to do an import via Excel, and then you'd have to manually build up all your BOMs and structure. Using the integration, all of these files are automatically coming over. You can see that now they're loaded inside of Fusion 360 Manage. So that eliminates the data entry errors of possibility. I already have all of my BOM structure built in, and all of these items are already inside of Fusion 360 Manage currently. And we have sent information over from Vault to Fusion that tells Fusion the states. It gives a link back to where the item is located inside of Vault, along with Vault IDs, and it gives a lot of information. And from here, we can do an engineering change order on these files. And when these files are updated and changed inside of Fusion 360 Manage, it will then update Vault to change the states accordingly. Now we can submit this change order. And now that this change order is being submitted, Pulse is activating, and for all 12 items that I've added to this engineering change order, it's going to go back inside of Vault and start updating the state to an in review state and locking them so that members of the change control board can view the metadata, they can view translation files, They'll send emails to people on the change control board to notify them that these files are ready to view. And when I hop back in Vault and hit refresh, these files will start to transition. It still has some processing time. So I can go back inside of Pulse. We can see that the change orders are starting to complete and information starting to process. There we go. Now all of these files inside of Vault have now changed to a for review state without me having to click any buttons inside of Fusion. And Pulse is doing all of this work in the background. And you can see it's very quick and easy to do without having to go in line by line, item by item inside of multiple software. Now going back inside of Fusion Managed, another process or workflow I want to show you that Matt described earlier in the webinar is a part number request workspace to allow, we set up this workspace to allow a company that may have a need to outsource design data to a design firm. And so this workspace will automatically create part numbers for a design firm to use. So there's a drop down, you can have your list of design firms that you wish to use. The system is what kind of part numbers you wish to give them. Let's give this a 4-digit number of 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll create 50 part numbers. So say we have 50 components to send a design firm to design up for us. And when we click save, we can see that it automatically generated a request ID. There's a system number of 1, 2, 3, 4. And now Pulse is firing in the background and is creating that list of part numbers that we can then give to our supplier. So let me refresh this tab. We go to the grid tab, they should start populating here. We go inside of Pulse. You can see that our part number request has now been completed. We do a refresh inside of Fusion 360 Manage. So this will.
I'm peeking behind this curtains, Corey. It looks like there was still actually a secondary process for things that'll be done in a second.
Gotcha.
So
yes,
your previous action was actually pushing. It pushed synchronized data back after it sent Vault data down. It also did a round trip to push new Fusion Lifecycle IDs back and forth. So it just finished that process, and now it should be finished with the part numbers. So now they should be in the grid.
There we go. And so after the processing is complete, we can see we have a list of part numbers. You can see my 1, 2, 3, 4 that I entered here. So if you have a certain kind of project or project number you want to include, that'll allow the customer to keep track of their project number, as well as itemizing each part number that was provided to the design firm. And then they can come in, or an engineer can come in and select which part numbers were used and save to update Fusion Manage. So now the process for creating these part numbers for a design firm is automated because of the work Pulse does in the background. And with that concludes my demonstration. I'll pass it back to Matt so he can kind of summarize the information that we've displayed.
All right, yeah, thank you, Corey. So yeah, in terms of what's next, I mean, that's the sort of quick demonstration of Pulse, showing the an example of Vault to Fusion Lifecycle or Fusion Managed 360. But I will want to go back to our list of endpoints. Pulse is able to connect any combination of these together, including multiple combinations, sending to multiple places. So, and we're building new Pulse endpoints, here and there each month, basically. And so this will continue to grow. So if there's something that you don't see here, it is still something that we are interested in taking on, especially if we've got maybe one half of the integration that you're looking for. But yeah, in terms of next steps, if any of this interests you or seems like it might be a fit, contact your local Imaginet representative and set up a time, and we're happy to dig more deeply, show you a little bit more of how it works and how the process works, as well as understand better what your integration problem is, so that we can help you solve it. But yeah, thank you for coming out, and we'd love to talk to you if you have interest in system integration.